Chapter 1. In the northern lands of Europe, where winters are long and dark, where pine forests stretch as far as the eye can see, and where ice covers the fjords for months, there exists a tradition that predates Christianity by centuries, perhaps by millennia. It is the tradition of the runes, a system of symbols that is simultaneously an alphabet, an oracle, and a spiritual technology. But to understand the runes, we cannot begin with academic history or linguistic analysis. We must begin where the runes themselves began, with the supreme sacrifice of the god Odin on the world tree. The Havamal, one of the oldest poems in the Poetic Edda, contains an extraordinary passage where Odin himself narrates how he obtained the runes. He did not invent them. He did not discover them through experimentation, nor did he learn them from a master. He received them through sacrifice and extreme suffering, through a near-death experience that opened his perception to normally invisible realities. The text describes that Odin hung himself from the Yggdrasil tree, the world tree that connects all realms of existence, for 9 complete nights. He pierced himself with his own spear, offered himself as a sacrifice to himself without food or water, hanging in agony while the wind shook the branches and the rain beat upon his body. And on the 9th day, on the boundary between life and death, in an altered state of consciousness produced by pain, hunger, thirst, and exposure, he looked down and saw the runes. They were not written on the tree. They were not delivered by a divine messenger. They simply appeared in his vision, shining with their own light, angular and potent forms that carried within them a power and meaning that transcended any ordinary language. Odin saw them, understood them in a flash of illumination, and with a cry that shook the worlds, he claimed them, took them for himself, and fell from the tree transformed by the knowledge he now possessed. Chapter 2. This mythical account is not simply an entertaining story about an ancient god. It is a coded description of a profound truth about the nature of the runes and how they can be truly known. The runes are not a human invention in the ordinary sense. They are not symbols that someone arbitrarily designed to represent the sounds of language. They are, according to the tradition that preserved them, a cosmic revelation, patterns that exist in the very structure of reality, forms that Odin perceived when his consciousness, through the extreme ordeal, was elevated or deepened beyond ordinary perception. This understanding of the runes as cosmic realities, rather than human creations, is fundamental to working with them effectively. If the runes were merely arbitrary symbols, they would have no inherent power. But if they are, as the tradition asserts, forms that exist independently in the fabric of reality, then knowing them, pronouncing them, tracing them, is to connect with real forces. It is to work with the fundamental architecture of the manifested universe. Let's compare this with modern alphabets. The letter A in English has no inherent power. It is a useful convention, an arbitrary symbol that represents a specific sound, because we all agree that it does. We could use a completely different symbol, and it would work just as well. The specific shape of the letter does not matter, except as a social agreement. The runes operate on a different principle. Each rune is what esotericists call a natural sigil, a form that will resonate with a specific energy regardless of whether someone believes in it or understands it. It is like a symbol of water waves that will inevitably evoke a sense of fluidity and movement, or like a symbol of flame that will evoke a sense of heat and transformation. The runes are archetypal forms that connect directly with fundamental aspects of experience and reality. Chapter 3. The archaeological discovery of runic inscriptions across Scandinavia, Germany, the British Isles, and even as far as Turkey, where Vikings traveled, provides tangible evidence that the runes were a real historical writing system used for centuries. But there are aspects of this archaeological record that are puzzling and suggest that the runes were more than a simple practical alphabet. Many runic inscriptions are not practical messages, but rather formulas that appear to be magical or ritualistic. One of the oldest known inscriptions on the Kilver stone from the 4th or 5th century simply lists the 24 runes of the Elder Futhark in complete order, with no other text. Why engrave simply the alphabet on a stone? Scholars suggest that it might be a protective amulet, that the power of the runes resided not in the words they formed, but in the symbols themselves. Other inscriptions contain repetitive formulas such as Alu Alu Alu, or sequences of runes that do not form words in an ordinary language, but seem designed for a vibratory or energetic effect. We find runic inscriptions on weapons, suggesting that the runes were believed to confer power upon the object. We find runes on jewelry, on tools, on boundary stones marking territory. And there are reports, though difficult to verify, that certain runic inscriptions seemed to have inexplicable effects. Stones that became warm when the runes were touched, objects that felt different when runes were traced upon them, people who reported visionary experiences when meditating on specific runes. These reports, while anecdotal, suggest that for those who worked with runes, they were not merely letters, but tools of power. Chapter 4. But if the runes had power, why was that knowledge almost completely lost for centuries? The answer is political and religious as much as it is cultural. When Christianity expanded across Northern Europe during the 8th to 12th centuries, it found in the runes not merely a writing system, but a symbol of the old pagan religion, of the beliefs and practices that the church sought to replace. The runes were associated with Odin, with the Norse gods, with practices of what Christians called witchcraft and paganism. Practitioners of runic magic were seen as a threat to the Christian order. Gradually, the use of runes was discouraged, then forbidden in many places. The Latin alphabet, associated with the Church and with the authority of Rome, replaced the runes for ordinary writing. But beyond official suppression, there was also a cultural shift. As Norse societies Christianized, the old traditions were seen as belonging to an age of darkness and ignorance. The runes survived for centuries in remote rural areas, particularly in Iceland and parts of Scandinavia, but increasingly as folkloric curiosities rather than as a living system of spiritual power. The knowledge of how to work with runes as a spiritual technology, of how to chant them, of how to use them for transformation and healing, was almost completely lost or was preserved only in fragments in sagas and poems that were read as literature rather than as practical instructions. For centuries, the runes were studied by academics as an interesting but dead historical writing system, nothing more. Chapter 5. The resurgence of interest in the runes as a spiritual practice began in the 19th century with a romantic nationalist movement in Germany and Scandinavia. Intellectuals and mystics began to explore the pre-Christian cultural roots of the Germanic and Norse peoples, searching for a cultural identity that was indigenous rather than imported from Rome and the Mediterranean. Figures like Guido von List in Austria began to develop esoteric systems based on runes, attempting to reconstruct what they believed was ancient lost wisdom. It is important to note here that some of these early runic revivals were co-opted by extreme nationalist ideologies, particularly in Germany in the first half of the 20th century. The runes were misused as symbols of alleged racial superiority, a terrible distortion of their original nature. But after the Second World War, a new wave of interest in runes emerged, this time more academically informed and more spiritually conscious. Researchers like Edred Thorson combined serious linguistic and historical scholarship with direct spiritual practice, attempting to reconstruct how the runes might have been used in ancient times and how they could be relevant to contemporary spiritual seekers. In recent decades, with a general resurgence of interest in pagan spirituality and pre-Christian spiritual paths, the runes have experienced a remarkable rebirth. There are now thousands of practitioners around the world who work with runes for divination, for meditation, for personal development, and for magic. There are communities, both physical and online, dedicated to runic study and practice. There are new books, courses, and resources that make runic knowledge more accessible than at any time since. The Christianization of the North. This resurgence is not simply romantic nostalgia for an idealized past. It is a recognition that the runes, as a symbolic system and as a spiritual technology, offer something valuable that was lost when they were suppressed. A connection to archetypal forces, a language of symbols that speaks directly to the unconscious, practices that integrate body, voice, mind, and spirit into transformative work. Chapter 6. To understand the runes as more than writing, we must appreciate that each rune operates on 3 levels simultaneously. There is the visual form, the symbol traced or carved. There is the sound, the name of the rune pronounced, and the phoneme it represents. And there is the force, the cosmic principle, the archetypal energy that the rune embodies and to which it grants access. Let's consider the first rune of the Futhark, Fehu. Visually, it looks like the letter F with the 2 horizontal lines pointing to the right. Its shape is simple but distinctive, easy to carve on wood or stone, which was important for an alphabet used in a culture where these were the primary writing materials. Its sound is F, the phoneme we use in words like fire, force, flow. But its full name is Fehu, a Proto-Germanic word meaning cattle, specifically mobile livestock, wealth in the form of animals. In ancient Norse societies where wealth was measured in cattle, Fehu represented prosperity, abundance, and movable resources. But more deeply, Fehu represents a cosmic force of dynamic energy flow, of the circulation of resources, of abundance that comes from movement and exchange rather than static accumulation. It is the energy of the primordial fire that transforms, that cannot be contained, that must flow and change. When we work with Ifehu, we are not simply drawing a symbol or pronouncing a sound. We are connecting with this force of dynamic flow, inviting it to manifest in our life. Each of the 24 runes operates in this triple manner. They have a recognizable form, an associated sound, and a force they represent. And it is the combination of the 3, especially when used consciously together, that releases the power of the rune. Chapter 7. The names of the runes are not arbitrary. Each name is a Proto-Germanic word that carries the essence of what the rune represents. Exploring these names is to delve into a complete cosmology, into an understanding of the world and its forces as it was understood by the ancient Norse peoples. Uruz, the second rune, means aurochs, the primitive wild bison that once roamed the forests of Europe. But Uruz represents more than the specific animal. It represents brute force, untamed primordial power, the wild vitality of nature in its rawest expression. To work with Uruz is to connect with life force in its purest form, with the power of survival, with the energy that makes muscles move, the heartbeat, the will persist against all adversity. Thurisaz, the third rune, means giant or troll, specifically the frost giants and the chaotic forces of the world in Norse mythology. Its visual shape resembles a hammer or a thorn, something that penetrates, breaks, and destroys. Thurisaz is the force of destruction that clears the way for new creation. The lightning that splits the sky, the power that breaks what has become rigid or stagnant. It is a dangerous force, one that must be handled with respect, but also a necessary one. Each name, explored in its etymology and cultural associations, reveals layers of meaning. The names not only identify the runes, the names are verbal portals to the power of the rune. Pronouncing the name correctly, with intention and understanding, is a magical act in itself. Chapter 8. The concept of runes as portals is central to their magical and transformative use. In runic tradition, it is understood that the manifested universe contains specific forces, archetypal energies that underlie and organize all experience. These forces are always present, but normally remain in the background, subtly influencing without our being conscious of them. The runes act as doors, as points of conscious access to these forces. When we trace a rune, when we chant it, when we meditate on it, we are opening a portal, creating a channel through which that specific force can flow more intensely into our consciousness and our experience. This is not primitive superstition, but a sophisticated understanding of how symbols affect consciousness. Modern psychology recognizes that specific symbols evoke specific responses in the psyche, that archetypal images resonate in the depths of the unconscious. The runes are particularly potent archetypal symbols, refined through centuries of use to be efficient keys to specific states of consciousness and the corresponding psychic forces. When we consciously work with a rune, say Ansuz, the rune of divine communication and inspired poetry, we are not inventing these effects. We are tuning into a real pattern in the structure of collective consciousness, a channel that has been opened and maintained by countless practitioners throughout centuries. We are like a radio tuning into a specific frequency that has always been transmitting. Chapter 9. Some modern occultists have developed the concept of runes, primordial runes or proto-runes, that would exist at an even more fundamental level than the 24 runes of the Elder Futhark. This is a speculative idea, not based on direct historical evidence, but one that has merit as a way of thinking about the nature of the runes. The theory is that there might be more basic forms, pure vibrational archetypes, of which the 24 known runes are differentiations or specific expressions. Just as white light can be split into a spectrum of colors, perhaps there exists a primordial runic light that expresses itself through the specific forms we know as individual runes. If this were true, then the work of an advanced runic master might include not only mastering the 24 known runes, but also attempting to perceive and work with these more primordial forms. Some practitioners report in deep meditation perceiving forms that are not in the traditional Futhark, symbols that feel like runes, but that have not been preserved in historical record. This opens a fascinating question. Are the 24 runes of the Elder Futhark the complete and final set of possible runes? Or are they simply the ones that were perceived and preserved by a specific Norse culture, while other cultures might have perceived different runic forms? Could there be runes that are still waiting to be discovered or rediscovered by contemporary practitioners? The tradition suggests that Odin saw the runes in a moment of dramatically expanded consciousness. Perhaps others, reaching similar states through deep spiritual practice, could also perceive runic forms that would expand or complement the known system. This possibility keeps the runic tradition alive and evolutionary rather than fossilized in the past. Chapter 10. The Elder Futhark is the oldest runic system for which we have substantial record. It consists of 24 runes, organized in a specific sequence that gives the system its name. Futhark is simply the first 6 runes: Fehu, Uruz, Thurisaz, Ansuz, Raido, Kenaz, just as ABC are the first letters of the Latin alphabet. This system was in use from approximately the 2nd century until the 8th century of our era, after which variations like the Younger Futhark with only 16 runes developed in Scandinavia, and the Anglo-Saxon Futhork with up to 33 runes in England. But the Elder Futhark is considered by most contemporary practitioners to be the most complete and powerful system, the closest to Odin's original vision. The 24 runes are organized into 3 groups of 8, called Aetter. The word Aet means family or clan, suggesting that each group of 8 runes is internally related, forming a cohesive family with shared characteristics. The first Aet is the Aet of Frey and Freya, the gods of fertility, prosperity, sacred sexuality, and the prosperous material world. The 8 runes of this Aet, from Fehu to Wunjo, mainly deal with physical experience, with material resources, with power in the manifest world, with the joy of embodied life. They are foundation runes, establishing a solid base for the spiritual work that follows. The second Aet is the Aet of Heimdall. the watchful guardian of the Bifrost Bridge that connects the human world with the realm of the gods. It is also associated with Hegel, the personification of hail and necessary destructive forces. The runes of this ayat, from Hagalaz to Sowilo, deal with challenge, with trial, with transformation through crisis, but also with protection and with the light that emerges from darkness. They are runes of testing and tempering. The third ayat is the ayat of Tyr, god of justice, law, and heroic self-sacrifice. The runes of this ayat, from Tiwaz to Othala, deal with spiritual victory, with inheritance, with culmination and completeness, with the harvest of wisdom gained through the complete journey. They are runes of realization and transcendence. Chapter 11. This tripartite division is not arbitrary. It represents a map of consciousness evolution, a journey that every spiritual seeker undertakes. We begin with the material, with establishing ourselves in the physical world, with understanding and mastering basic forces of survival and prosperity. The first ayat is the foundation. Then we face challenge, crisis, the necessary destruction of what we have built that has become limiting. We are tested, tempered like metal in a forge. We encounter what is beyond our comfort zone, what challenges our certainties. The second ayat is the crucible of transformation. Finally, if we survive the trials, we emerge transformed, with wisdom gained through experience, ready to return to the world with gifts to share. We reach culmination, completeness, a spiritual heritage that can be transmitted. The third ayat is the harvest and the return. This is not just a linear progression that happens once. It is a cycle that we repeat on multiple scales throughout life. Every project, every relationship, every phase of development goes through these stages. The runes provide a map for navigating this cycle with consciousness instead of being blindly tossed by its phases. The number 24 itself has significance. It is 12 pairs reflecting the 12 months, the 12 zodiac signs, the idea of cyclical completeness. Each rune can be seen as having a complementary opposite within the system, a polarity that together encompasses a complete spectrum of experience. It is also a multiple of 8 and 3, sacred numbers in Norse numerology. 8 represents infinity, cycles that renew. 3 represents Trinity, the synthesis of duality. 24 contains both, suggesting a system that is complete in itself, containing all the necessary energies for a full navigation of existence. Chapter 12. But the runes did not begin as written symbols. This is a crucial understanding that is often lost. Before being engraved on stone or carved on wood, the runes existed as sounds, as chants, as vocal vibrations that carried power. The written form came later, as a way to preserve and transmit these sacred sounds. In ancient Norse tribal societies, which were primarily oral before developing extensive writing, crucial knowledge was transmitted through memorization and through songs and poems that made memorization easier. The names of the runes, the associations of each rune, the magical uses of the runes, all of this would have been originally preserved in oral tradition, chanted from generation to generation. The act of chanting runes, called Galdor in Old Norse, was central to their magical use. Galdor means incantation or spell, but more literally means magic song or chant. The practitioner of Galdor was a Vitki, a word meaning the one who knows, the wise one or magician who had mastered the art of runic chanting. Chanting a rune was not simply pronouncing its name. It was intoning its sound in a specific way, holding the tone, allowing the vibration to resonate in the body, projecting the sound outward with focused intention. It was a conscious use of the voice as an instrument of power, as a tool for manipulating subtle energies. The Norse sagas contain multiple references to Galdor masters, to sorcerers who could achieve extraordinary effects through the chanting of runes. They could heal wounds, they could calm storms, they could affect the minds of others. they could protect themselves from harm. These are not necessarily literal accounts, but they preserve the memory that Galdr was considered a powerful art, a practice that required years of training and conferred abilities beyond the ordinary. Chapter 13. Each rune has a specific vibrational frequency, a characteristic tone. This is not a vague mystical statement, but a practical observation that any practitioner can verify. When we pronounce different sounds, we feel vibrations in different parts of the body. Open vowel sounds like A and O resonate deeply in the chest and abdomen. Consonantal sounds like M and N vibrate in the head and skull. Sounds like K and T are more percussive, creating impact rather than sustained resonance. The runes, by having a specific associated sound, also have a characteristic vibrational pattern. Fehu, with its F sound, creates a vibration that feels like a quick flow, like crackling fire. Uruz, with its U sound, resonates deeply in the belly, evoking a sense of visceral power. Thurisaz, with its Thish sound, has a penetrating quality, like a thorn or a striking hammer. Experienced Galdr practitioners develop a refined sensitivity to these vibrations. They can feel how each rune affects their energetic field in a unique way. They can consciously direct the vibration towards specific parts of the body that need healing or activation. They can project the vibration outward, affecting the environment and people nearby. This is consistent with the modern understanding of sound as vibration that has measurable effects on matter. Cymatics, the study of how sound organizes matter into patterns, has visually demonstrated that different frequencies create different geometric patterns in sand or liquid. If sound can organize physical matter like this, it can certainly affect the human body, which is largely of water and is extremely sensitive to vibration. Chapter 14. A fascinating and esoteric aspect of the runic system is the concept of hidden vowels. Observing the 24 runes of the Elder Futhark, we notice that only some represent pure vowel sounds. Ansus can be pronounced as A, Iwaz as E, Isa as I, Othala as O, Uruz can contain U. But many runes represent consonants or consonant vowel combinations. However, in advanced Galdr practice, it is taught that every rune, even those that seem to be purely consonantal, contains a hidden vowel or can be chanted with a specific vowel to release a particular aspect of its power. For example, Kenaz, normally pronounced with a K sound, can be chanted as Ka, Ke, Ki, Ko, Ku, and each variation accesses a different nuance of Kenaz's energy. This practice recognizes that the vowel is what allows sound to be sustained, that the vowel is where the power of resonance resides. The consonant is like a key that opens a door, but the vowel is the space to which the door grants access. By experimenting with different vowels in combination with the consonantal character of each rune, the practitioner can explore the full spectrum of energy that the rune contains. This is not well documented in historical sources, but it is a practice that has been rediscovered or reconstructed by contemporary runic masters through direct experimentation. And the results, consistently reported by multiple independent practitioners, suggest that there is validity in the approach. The hidden vowels allow for fine modulation of runic power, like piano keys that allow for playing a complete melody instead of just striking a drum. Chapter 15, the exact original pronunciation of the runes, is a subject of debate among academics. Proto-Germanic, the language in which the runes were originally named, was not extensively written, and we certainly have no audio recordings. What we have are reconstructions based on comparative linguistics, on how the modern descendants of Proto-Germanic pronounce related words, on patterns of sound change that we can trace through time. For some sounds, there is reasonable confidence. The F sound was probably very similar to our modern F. The A sound was probably an open vowel like in father, but other sounds are more uncertain. Was the th sound of thurisaz like an English thin or like an English this? Were the vowels short or long, open or closed? For a contemporary practitioner, this uncertainty can be frustrating. We want to know the correct pronunciation, the exact original way, believing that only then will we access the complete power of the runes. But there is a different perspective that can be liberating. Perhaps the exact pronunciation is less crucial than the intention, the understanding, and the energetic connection we bring to the practice. The runes have been pronounced in slightly different ways by different peoples throughout centuries. Norse people in Norway pronounced them differently than Germanic people in Germany, or Anglo-Saxons in England. And yet, all these variations seem to have accessed the power of the runes effectively. This suggests that there is flexibility, that the runes respond to sincerity and comprehension more than to phonetic perfection. That said, making the best effort to approximate the reconstructed pronunciation is a sign of respect for tradition and can help connect with the ancestral energy of the system. Many resources now exist, created by academics and practitioners, that offer guidance on the most probable pronunciation. These can serve as a starting point, with the understanding that each practitioner will eventually develop a personal relationship with the runes that may include variations in pronunciation based on direct experience. Chapter 16. The manuscript concludes this first section with an invitation to direct experimentation. Knowledge about runes, no matter how extensive, is only preparation. The runes must be chanted, traced, meditated upon, and lived. Only through direct practice do they reveal themselves as a living alphabet, as an active spiritual technology. The listener is invited to choose a rune, perhaps Fehu, to start with the first. To learn its shape, visualize it with closed eyes, and trace its form in the air with a finger or a wand. To learn its name, Fehu, and pronounce it slowly and clearly, feeling how the mouth and throat form the sound. To chant the name, sustaining the sound F-F-E-Ho, allowing the vibration to fill the body. And then, to sit in meditation, holding the image of Fehu in the mind, continuing to chant its name softly and observe what emerges. What sensations appear in the body? What emotions arise? What images, words, or understandings present themselves spontaneously? This is not active imagination, but receptivity to what the rune itself communicates when given space and attention. Some may feel heat, a flow of energy, activation in specific areas of the body. Others may receive visions or impressions about the rune's meaning that they had not read in any book. Still others may simply feel peace, connection, a sense of touching something ancient and powerful. All these responses are valid and are the beginning of a personal relationship with the runes that will deepen through continued practice. The runic tradition teaches that each rune is a conscious being in a sense, an entity with its own intelligence and will. We should not approach the runes as passive tools that we simply use for our purposes. They are more like powerful allies with whom we establish a relationship, whom we ask for help with respect, and who can choose to respond or not, depending on the sincerity and preparation of the practitioner. This animistic perspective, where symbols are treated as living beings, may seem strange to a modern rational mind, but it is consistent with the ancient Norse worldview, where the entire world was alive, where trees, stones, rivers, and certainly sacred symbols revealed by the gods possessed consciousness and spirit. And pragmatically, approaching the runes in this manner, with respect and openness to a reciprocal relationship rather than with an attitude of manipulative control, yields better results. When we ask a rune to teach us, to show us its nature, to help us with a specific situation, and we do so with genuine humility, the runes respond. The answer may come as a sudden insight, as synchronicity in external life, as a meaningful dream, as a feeling of subtle but clear guidance. Over time, through multiple interactions, a relationship, familiarity, and mutual trust develop between the practitioner and the runes. Chapter 17. The runes also teach through their presence in nature and in daily life. Once we begin working with runes, we start to see them everywhere. A fallen branch on the ground might perfectly form the rune Iwaz. Cracks in a wall might suggest Iza. Shadows cast by objects can create momentary runic shapes. These spontaneous appearances of runic forms are not necessarily mystical messages in every case, but they train perception, awakening the consciousness that runic shapes are natural patterns that occur in the world, not just human inventions. They are like fractals or spirals, patterns we find in multiple scales of reality because they are expressions of fundamental organizing principles. Furthermore, when we are working intensely with a particular rune, that rune will tend to appear in our experience with increased frequency. This may be partially because our attention is tuned to notice it, but practitioners report that it goes beyond simple attentional bias. It is as if the rune, once consciously invited into our life, manifests in multiple ways, drawing our attention to aspects of experience that resonate with its energy. If we are working with Raido, the rune of journey and movement, we may encounter unexpected opportunities to travel, or we may notice that our life is in constant motion, or we may find the theme of travel appearing in conversations, books we read, movies we watch. The rune is teaching not only through formal meditation, but through how it colors and structures our lived experience. Chapter 18. The runes also have correspondences with other symbolic systems, although these correspondences must be handled carefully so as not to dilute the unique integrity of each system. Some practitioners have attempted to map runes to tarot cards, astrological planets, elements, and chakras. These correspondences can be useful as bridges between systems, as ways to understand runes through familiar frames of reference. For example, Fehu, with its association with abundance and flow, can be related to the fire element in its dynamic aspect, to the planet Jupiter which governs expansion and prosperity, and to the tarot arcana of the Wheel of Fortune, which represents cycles of abundance. Sowilo, the sun rune, obviously relates to the solar orb, to the fire element in its purest expression, and to solar tarot cards. But these correspondences are not original to the runic tradition. They are modern additions that attempt to create synthetic systems. The danger is that if we rely too heavily on these correspondences, we can lose what is unique to the runes: the specific way they cut reality, the particular nuances of their energies that are not exactly replicated by other symbols. It is like translating a poem from one language to another. The translation may capture the general meaning, but nuances, wordplay, and specific resonances of the original language are lost. Similarly, translating runes through correspondences with other systems can be useful as an introduction, but eventually we must find the runes on their own terms, in their own symbolic language. Chapter 19, the power of the runes, according to tradition, resides not only in knowing them individually, but in understanding how they relate to each other, how they can be combined, how they form a coherent system where each part informs and is informed by the whole. This is what makes the Futhark not simply an alphabet, but a complete cosmology, a map of the manifested universe in 24 archetypal forms. When we study the runes in sequence, we begin to perceive a narrative that unfolds. Fehu, primordial abundance, livestock, movable wealth. Uruz, the brute force necessary to manage and protect that wealth. Thurisaz, the chaotic forces that threaten, which must be faced or overcome. Ansus, the divine wisdom and communication that guides. Raidho, the journey and ordered movement toward goals. Kenaz, the fire of knowledge and transformation. Each rune prepares the way for the next. Each one is a response to challenges presented by the previous one. Together they tell a story of the descent of spirit into matter, of struggle in the manifested world, of death and rebirth, of eventual transformed return to origin. It is the story of every soul, every civilization, and every cycle of existence. Understanding these relationships between runes allows for working with rune combinations, creating what are called bind runes, where multiple runes are combined into a single symbol, or creating Galdrastafir, runic formulas where a specific sequence of runes is chanted or written for a particular effect. This is a more advanced level of runic practice, but it is rooted in the understanding that the runes are not isolated entities, but parts of an integrated symbolic ecosystem. Chapter 20. There is also a personal, almost intimate aspect of runic work that must be mentioned. Through the process of learning and working with the runes, we are inevitably learning about ourselves. Each rune reflects an aspect of our own psyche, our own experience, our own journey. Some runes will resonate immediately, feeling familiar and comfortable. These are often aspects of ourselves that we have already developed, energies that already flow with relative ease. Other runes may feel strange, uncomfortable, even repellent. These deserve special attention because they often represent aspects of ourselves that we have denied or repressed, energies that we need to integrate for completeness. The man who feels uncomfortable with Berkano, the rune of nurture and maternal care, may be disconnected from his capacity to nurture. The woman who avoids Tiwaz, the rune of war and self-sacrifice, may be avoiding her own power and strength. The journey through the 24 runes, taking time to really know each one, to meditate with it, to allow it to teach us, is a form of deep therapy, of psychological integration, of what Jung called individuation. We are gathering the fragmented aspects of ourselves, recognizing and honoring the full spectrum of forces operating in our life. And at the end of this journey, if we complete it with sincerity and dedication, we emerge transformed, more complete, more conscious, and more capable. We have internalized the alphabet of the cosmos. We have learned to read and write in the language that the universe uses to communicate its deepest secrets. Chapter 21. The discovery of the living alphabet is, therefore, simultaneously a historical discovery, a personal experience, and a cosmic revelation. Historical because we can trace the runes through archaeological evidence, sagas and poems, and traditions that have survived in fragmented but recognizable form. Personal because every practitioner must discover the runes for themselves through direct experience. One cannot simply read about them in a book and understand their power. Cosmic, because the runes, according to the tradition that preserved them, are eternal principles, forms that existed before humans perceived them, and that will continue to exist, regardless of whether anyone knows or uses them. We are living in an extraordinary moment where these three dimensions converge. We have more access to historical research on runes than at any time since their suppression. We have vibrant communities of practitioners sharing personal experiences and techniques, and we have, perhaps, the collective maturity as a species to approach these symbols of power with respect, rather than with the fanaticism and distortion that has sometimes characterized them in the recent past. The runes are calling again. Odin hung from the tree and perceived them in a moment of extreme vulnerability and openness. We do not need to literally replicate his ordeal, but we do need to bring a certain quality of openness, a willingness to sacrifice our current certainties and limitations, a willingness to see beyond the ordinary. The runes reward the brave, the sincere, and the patient. The living alphabet is waiting, not in a museum or an academic text or a remote past, but here now, vibrating in the air when their names are chanted, shining in the mind when their forms are visualized, resonating in the body when their power is invited. 24 doors to 24 dimensions of reality and consciousness. 24 silent teachers ready to teach whoever approaches with respect and dedication. The journey is beginning. The first rune has been revealed, but this is only a threshold. Beyond await the mysteries, the practices, and the powers of transformation that make the runes not simply a historical curiosity, but a living, relevant, potent spiritual technology for the 21st century, as much as it was for the centuries that preceded the Christianization of the North. The runes are not of the past, they are eternal. And now, in this moment of resurgence and rediscovery, they are available to those who have ears to hear their call, eyes to see their forms, a voice to chant their names, and a brave heart to undertake the journey through the alphabet of the cosmos, letter by letter, rune by rune, secret by secret, until the complete text of existence can be read, understood, and consciously lived. The manuscript of the runes has been opened. The words are shining on the page, but they are words that must be spoken, chanted, and breathed to release their full power. The silent reader learns something. The active chanter is transformed. Which will you choose to be? The choice, as always, is yours. But the runes are waiting, patient as they have waited for centuries, ready to reveal their secrets to whoever comes prepared to receive them, ready to be transformed by the power of the ancient word preserved in angular forms of timeless wisdom. And so concludes the first revelation of the living alphabet. But as Odin discovered, the true knowledge of the runes does not come from listening or reading, but from direct experience, dedicated practice, and a personal journey through each rune until all have been internalized, until the practitioner himself becomes a living expression of the Futhark, a living text written in the language of the stars and the earth, of fire and ice, of fate and will interwoven in the eternal dance that is life itself manifesting in conscious human form, finally capable of reading its own text, understanding its own code, and singing its own song in the ancient frequencies preserved in the hidden runes of the Word. Chapter 22. Runes as Vibrational Medicine. The runes, understood in their deepest dimension, are vibrational medicine, specific frequencies that can be consciously applied to restore balance, heal disharmony, and catalyze transformation on multiple levels of being. Each of the 24 runes corresponds to a specific aspect of health and well-being, not only physical, but also emotional, mental, and spiritual. Understanding these correspondences allows the practitioner to use the runes as an energetic pharmacy, selecting the appropriate remedy for the present condition. Let's first consider the runes of protection, those that create a shield, establish boundaries, and keep hostile forces at bay. Algiz, with its shape resembling a person with arms raised toward the sky or elk horns extending upwards, is perhaps the most powerful protection rune. Its name means elk or sedge grass, both symbols of natural defense. The elk uses its horns for protection. The flexible sedge survives storms by bending but not breaking. Working with Algiz is about establishing a connection with higher protective forces, with what some traditions call guardian angels or protective spirits. It is about creating an energetic field around the body that repels negative influences while allowing beneficial energies to enter. By chanting Algiz, visualizing it shining with white or golden light, and tracing it in the air around the body, the practitioner activates protection that operates on a subtle but real level. Aiwaz, the rune of the yew tree, a sacred tree in Norse traditions associated with death and rebirth, offers a different type of protection. It is protection through deep-root connection, through resilience that comes from having faced and survived the worst. The yew is poisonous, but also medicinal, capable of killing, but also of curing. Aiwaz is the protection of the experienced warrior who has seen battle and emerged stronger, who no longer fears because he understands that death is not an end, but a transformation. Thurisaz, already mentioned as the rune of giants and chaotic forces, is protection through counterattack, through showing thorns, through being formidable. It is Thor's hammer that destroys the enemies of cosmic order. When we are attacked, when hostile forces threaten, Thurisaz is the energy that responds with equal or greater force, that does not allow evil to prevail without fierce opposition. Chapter 23. Runes for Healing. The runes of healing operate not by directly eliminating disease, but by restoring the vital flow that allows the body to heal itself. Uruz, the rune of the aurochs, of the primitive bison, is life force in its purest expression. When we are sick, weakened, or exhausted, we need Uruz. Its energy is like a transfusion of primordial vitality, like a direct connection to the source of life that animates all flesh. Chanting Uruz with a deep, guttural voice, allowing the sound ooh to vibrate in the belly and chest, is to invoke this force. One can visualize a dark red light, the color of vital blood, filling the body. Uruz can be traced over areas of the body that need strengthening. Practitioners report a sensation of heat, energy flowing, and muscles tightening with new strength. Sowilo, the rune of the sun, is healing through light, through solar energy that dispels darkness, burns infections, vitaminizes, and energizes. On a physical level, Sowilo can be used for conditions related to lack of sunlight, for seasonal depression, and for low moods. On an energetic level, Sowilo is like a ray of divine light, penetrating places where shadow has reigned, illuminating, revealing, and transforming. Sowilo's shape resembles a solar ray, or an angular S. While chanting it, SSSO, one can visualize a bright sun above the head, rays descending through the body, filling every cell with golden light. It is a particularly powerful practice at sunrise, when the real sun is emerging, synchronizing the personal practice with the cosmic cycle. Berkano, the rune of the birch tree, the tree of new beginnings in spring, is healing through regeneration, through activating natural processes of growth and renewal. Its energy is gentle, maternal, and nourishing. It is appropriate for convalescence, for recovery after trauma or surgery, and for any situation where tissues need to regenerate and renew. Berkano has a receptive feminine quality. It is not an aggressive force that attacks disease, but an energy that sustains, nurtures, and creates optimal conditions for natural healing to occur. When working with Berkano, one can visualize green shoots emerging, spring arriving after winter, and life renewing itself after a period of dormancy. Chapter 24, Runes of Transformation. The runes of transformation are perhaps the deepest, because they not only affect symptoms, but catalyze fundamental changes in consciousness and in the energetic structure of the being. Dagaz, whose name means Ede or dawn, is the rune of sudden awakening, of illumination, of the moment where everything changes irreversibly. Its visual shape, like two triangles joined forming an hourglass or butterfly figure, represents the transformation through a critical change point. Dagaz is appropriate when we are on the verge of a breakthrough, when we have been working on a problem or seeking understanding for a prolonged time and are finally ready for the insight to occur. Chanting Dagaz. Especially at the real dawn, is inviting that moment of revolutionary clarity, where everything that was confused suddenly becomes obvious, where the solution to an impossible problem appears, where deep understanding replaces ignorance. Practitioners report extraordinary experiences with Dagaz, moments where they literally feel as if a light turned on in their minds, where years of confusion dissolve in an instant of crystalline understanding. It is a powerful but also potentially destabilizing rune, because the awakening it brings may require abandoning old beliefs and structures that no longer serve. Othala, the last rune of the Futhark, represents ancestral inheritance, legacy, and the spiritual home to which we finally return. It is transformation through fully reclaiming who we are, through integrating all our history, personal and ancestral, through standing firm in our complete identity. Othala is particularly relevant for transgenerational healing work, for releasing inherited patterns of trauma or limitation. Its shape resembles a diamond or a house with a pointed roof. When working with Othala, one can meditate on lineage, ancestors, and the gifts and challenges we have inherited. Othala can be used to bless the physical home, to create a sense of belonging, and to establish a solid base of identity from which we can grow without losing our roots. Chapter 25. Runic Diagnosis. Diagnosing which rune is needed at a given moment is an art that develops through practice and increasing sensitivity. There are several methods. The most direct is simply to ask internally, "What rune do I need now?" And then to be receptive to the answer that may come as a rune name appearing in the mind, a vision of a runic shape, or a feeling of being drawn toward a particular rune. Another method is to use physical runes, whether carved on wood or stone, or drawn on cards, as an oracle. They are mixed, and one is selected with closed eyes asking, "What runic medicine do I need today?" The rune that emerges is the one that requires attention, work, and integration. This is not fortune-telling, but a present diagnosis, an identification of the energy that is asking to be recognized and worked with. One can also do a systematic reading of one's own state, reviewing each area of life and health and asking which rune resonates. How is my physical energy? If it is low, perhaps Uruz? How are my boundaries and protection? If I feel vulnerable, perhaps Algiz? How is my mental clarity? If I am confused, perhaps Ansuz? How is my emotional heart? If it is closed, perhaps Gebo? With time, the practitioner develops such an intimate relationship with the necessary runes that their presence makes itself felt without conscious effort. A rune may appear repeatedly in dreams, in synchronicities, in casual forms observed in nature or architecture. These are invitations from the rune itself, signs that its medicine is needed now. Chapter 26. Preparation for Galdor. Galdor, the art of runic chanting, is a central practice for releasing the transformative power of the runes. It is not enough to know the runes intellectually, to be able to identify them visually, or to understand their meanings conceptually. They must be chanted. Their vibrations must be produced and experienced in the body. Only then do they become active medicine. The preparation for Galdor practice begins with creating a sacred space. This can be simple or elaborate, depending on preference and circumstances. At a minimum level, it is a matter of finding a quiet place where one will not be interrupted, perhaps lighting a candle, burning incense, and setting a clear intention that this time is dedicated to sacred runic work. At a more elaborate level, an altar can be created with symbols of the 9 worlds of Norse cosmology, with representations of deities associated with runes, and with natural objects like stones, branches, and water. The body must also be prepared. Some practitioners fast before intense runic work. Others bathe ritually, visualizing purification not only of physical dirt, but of discordant energies. Clothing can be chosen consciously, perhaps special garments reserved for spiritual practice, or specific colors that resonate with the rune to be worked with. Posture is important. One can sit in a traditional meditation position or stand if movement is planned to be incorporated. Some prefer to work outdoors, in a forest or by the water, connecting with natural forces that resonate with runic energies. The spine must be erect, but not rigid, allowing free flow of energy and sound through the body. Chapter 27. Basic Galdor Technique. The basic Galdor technique has 3 components that must be integrated: visualization, pronunciation, and tone sustainment. We begin by choosing a specific rune to work with. Let's say we choose Ansuz, the rune of divine communication, poetic inspiration, and the power of the word itself. First, we visualize Ansuz clearly. We close our eyes and see the rune shining in the inner space, perhaps in a brilliant blue or golden color. We see its lines, its shape resembling the letter F, with diagonal lines pointing downward instead of horizontal. We hold this image stable in the mind. Second, we pronounce the name of the rune, An-su-i. We say it clearly and distinctly, feeling how the lips, tongue, and throat form the sound. A-A-N-A's, O-Z's. Each phoneme is articulated consciously. It is not a casual mumble, but a deliberate ceremonial pronunciation. Third, we begin to sustain the tone, chanting the name in a prolonged manner. Ah. We inhale deeply, and on a long controlled exhale, we hold the sound, allowing it to vibrate in the throat, chest, and head. We feel the physical vibration of the sound in the body. We repeat this multiple times, perhaps 9 times, a sacred number in Norse tradition. While chanting, we maintain the visualization of the rune. We see it pulsing with each intonation, becoming brighter and more vivid. And we remain receptive to any sensation, emotion, image, or understanding that emerges during the practice. Galdor is not just a mechanical exercise, but a dialogue, a bidirectional communication between the practitioner and the rune. Chapter 28, Rhythm and Stada. Each rune has a specific respiratory rhythm that corresponds to its energetic nature. Runes of Yang, active ascending energy, like Sowilo or Tiwaz, are chanted with strong, decisive exhalations and brief energetic inhalations. The rhythm is fast, vigorous, and martial. Runes of Yin, receptive descending energy, like Laguz, water, or Berkano, are chanted with soft, prolonged exhalations and slow, deep inhalations. The rhythm is slow, fluid, like the ocean swell. Discovering the correct rhythm for each rune is part of the process of knowing it intimately. One can start with a normal respiratory rhythm and then experiment, allowing the rune itself to suggest its preferred rhythm. Some runes want to be chanted quickly, others slowly. Some with many short repetitions, others with few long repetitions. Practice itself teaches these subtleties. Runic postures, called stada in modern Icelandic, are a practice where the body adopts the shape of the rune, becoming a physical expression of the symbol. This practice is not well documented in ancient sources, but has been developed by contemporary practitioners based on the logical principle that aligning the body with the rune's shape deepens the connection and allows the rune's energy to flow more fully through the entire being. For Algiz, the posture is standing with arms raised at an angle upwards, forming an inverted V, like the shape of the rune. This posture is held while chanting the rune's name, feeling how the body becomes an antenna receiving celestial protective energies. For Isa, the rune of ice and stillness, the posture is standing perfectly straight and motionless, like a pillar of ice, arms at the sides of the body. For Gebo, the rune of exchange and reciprocity, whose shape is like an X, one can cross the arms over the chest or adopt a posture where the body forms an X. Chapter 29. The combination of runes in sequences, creating words of power, is a more advanced level of Galdor. Just as individual letters form words with meanings that transcend the individual letters, runes can be combined to create synergistic effects. The word ALU, for example, appears in multiple ancient runic inscriptions. It consists of Ansus, Laguz, and Urus. It is not a word in the ordinary sense, but a magical formula whose meaning emerges from the combination of the 3 runes: divine communication, flow, and vital force. Personal formulas can be created for specific purposes. For protection during travel, one could combine Rido, journey, with Algiz, protection, and Sowilo, success. Rideho, Algiz, Sowilo, chanted in sequence, create an energetic field that protects and favors the journey. For the healing of the emotional heart, one could combine Berkano, regeneration, with Wunjo, joy, and Gebo, reciprocity. Each combination is an experiment, an exploration of how runic energies interact and mutually enhance each other. The testimonies of Galdor practitioners are numerous and notable. A woman reports that after months of chanting Sowilo daily, her chronic depression that had resisted medication and therapy began to lift, as if a literal sun were emerging in her psyche. A man recounts that Thurisaz chanted when facing a workplace situation where he was being intimidated, gave him courage he had never felt before, and the situation resolved in his favor in an almost miraculous way. Another practitioner describes an experience with Dagas. After weeks of stagnation on a creative project, he chanted Dagas at dawn for 9 consecutive days. On the 10th day, he woke up with the complete solution clear in his mind, as if it had been downloaded during sleep. The solution worked perfectly, and the project was successfully completed. These are not necessarily supernatural effects, but results of consciously working with archetypal energies, of aligning personal intention with cosmic forces, of using vocal vibration to reorganize internal and external energetic patterns. Galdor works, but it works through subtle laws that science is only beginning to understand. Chapter 30. Runic Chakras. The correspondences between runes and chakras, though not original to the Norse tradition, which did not use the Indian concept of chakras, are useful for contemporary practitioners, familiar with both systems. These correspondences are based on the energetic resonance between the qualities of specific runes and the functions of specific chakras. Fehu, the rune of abundance and movable resources, naturally corresponds with Muladhara, the root chakra at the base of the spine associated with survival, security, and material grounding. Working with Fehu while meditating on the root chakra can help heal issues of financial insecurity, lack of a sense of belonging, and disconnection from the physical body and the material world. Kenaz, the rune of fire, the torch of illumination and transformation, corresponds with Manipura, the solar plexus chakra associated with personal power, will, and both physical and psychic digestion of experiences. Chanting Kenaz while visualizing a flame burning in the solar plexus activates this center, strengthens the will, increases confidence, and improves the capacity to transform raw experiences into refined wisdom. Gebo, whose X shape represents exchange, reciprocity, and giving and receiving in perfect balance, corresponds with Anahata, the heart chakra. Working with Gebo is about healing the heart, learning to give without depletion, to receive without debt, and to participate in the circulation of love and energy that characterizes healthy relationships. It is medicine for hearts closed by past wounds, for people who give too much and receive too little, or vice versa. Ansus, the rune of communication, the divine word, poetry, and prophecy, naturally corresponds with Vishuddha, the throat chakra associated with expression, speaking personal truth, and verbal creativity. Chanting Ansus while focusing on the throat can release blockages in expression, help one find one's own voice, and open a channel of communication with higher dimensions of consciousness. Dagas, the rune of awakening and total transformation, corresponds with Sahasrara, the crown chakra at the top of the head associated with enlightenment, connection with the divine, and transcendence of the ego. Working with Dagas is inviting an experience of spiritual awakening, a direct recognition of true nature beyond limited identifications. Chapter 31. Contemporary Applications. The contemporary applications of runic art are diverse and constantly evolving as practitioners explore new ways to integrate ancient wisdom into modern contexts. Rune meditation is perhaps the most direct and accessible application. One chooses a rune to meditate on, sits in stillness, visualizes the rune with closed eyes, and remains with it, allowing it to reveal its secrets. This meditation can be simple silent contemplation of the form, or it can include chanting the rune's name, or it can expand into a visionary journey where one imaginally enters the rune's world. Some practitioners report experiences where they feel as if they travel toward the rune and enter a specific dimension that it governs, encountering landscapes, beings, and teachings that emerge spontaneously. Runic affirmations integrate runes into conscious manifestation practice. Instead of or in addition to verbal affirmations, one visualizes the appropriate rune and declares the intention with its energy. With the power of Fehu, I attract fluid abundance into my life. With the power of Tiwa's rune of victory, I achieve my goal. The rune acts as an amplifier, an energetic seal that imprints the intention onto subtle levels of reality where manifestation begins. Runes in energetic healing involve tracing them over the body or in the aura for therapeutic effect. The energetic healer, after assessing the client's field, can trace specific runes over areas that need balance. Uruz can be traced over an area of weakness to strengthen, Sawilo over an area of stagnation to activate, Isa over an area of inflammation or agitation to calm. The tracings can be done physically with a finger touching the body, or energetically in the aura without physical contact. Chapter 32. Talismans and Runic. Journaling. Runic talismans are physical objects charged with runic energy for a specific purpose. Traditionally, they were carved on wood, bone, or stone. Today, they can be engraved on metal, drawn on paper, or even tattooed on the skin. The process of creating a talisman is a ritual in itself. One chooses the appropriate rune or combination of runes for the intention. The material is prepared. The rune is carved or drawn with total concentration, chanting its name, visualizing its power imbuing the object. Once completed, the talisman can be carried in a pocket, worn as jewelry, or placed in the home or car, according to its purpose. A protection talisman with algiz is carried. A prosperity talisman with Fehu is placed in the workspace. A love talisman with Gebo is kept in the bedroom. The talisman acts as a constant anchor of runic energy, a tangible reminder of the established intention. Conscious runic journaling is a practice where a diary is kept, but using runes instead of or in addition to ordinary writing. At the end of each day, one reflects, what rune characterized this day? Was it a day of Raido, of movement and travel? Was it a day of Isa, of forced stillness? Was it a day of Kanaz, of insights and transformations? The rune is drawn in the diary, perhaps with brief notes on how its energy manifested. Over time, this runic diary becomes an energetic map of one's life, revealing patterns, cycles, and recurring lessons. One can look back and see, I spent 3 weeks in the energy of Thurisaz, facing challenges, and then emerged into Wunjo, joy. The pattern repeats. This consciousness allows one to navigate life with more wisdom, recognizing where one is in a cycle and what energy is needed to cultivate. Chapter 33. Contemporary Communities. Contemporary runic practice communities exist both physically and online. There are groups that meet regularly to chant runes together, share experiences, and study ancient and modern texts. There are internet forums where practitioners from all over the world exchange knowledge, ask questions, and offer mutual support. There are annual festivals and conferences dedicated to Norse spirituality and runic practice. These communities are valuable for multiple reasons. They provide a social context for a practice that might otherwise feel isolated. They offer opportunities to learn from more experienced practitioners. They create a group energetic field that amplifies individual work. And crucially, they help maintain ethical standards and rigor in practice, counteracting tendencies toward insensitive cultural appropriation or egocentric use of runic power. However, the practitioner must be discerning. Not all runic communities are equally healthy. Some may have connections with extremist ideologies, a distorted echo of the misuse of runes by nationalist movements in the past. Others may be superficial, treating runes as a New Age fad rather than a sacred tradition with real depth. The ideal community is one that honors the historical and cultural roots of the runes while remaining open and inclusive, that emphasizes personal spiritual development over dogma, and that insists on the ethical use of any power developed. Chapter 34. The Path of the Rune Master. The path of the Rune Master, the Vidki, is a journey of years or decades, not a quickly attained destination. The stages of learning are gradual. It begins as a student, learning basic forms, names, and traditional meanings of the runes. Texts are studied, both ancient sources and modern works. One practices identifying runes, drawing them correctly, and pronouncing their names. The next stage is practitioner, where intellectual knowledge begins to turn into lived experience. Regular practices of runic meditation Galdor and work with runes in daily life are established. Direct experiences of runic power begin to occur, moments where the runes clearly produce effects, where theory is validated through tangible results. The initiate stage arrives when one has worked deeply with all 24 runes, completing the journey through the entire Futhark. This is not an initiation conferred by an external authority, but an internal recognition that something fundamental has changed. The runes are no longer external symbols to be learned, but integrated internal forces. One has become a living runic text. Finally, the stage of Vitki, or master, is reached when one begins to teach others, transmitting runic wisdom to a new generation. This does not necessarily mean becoming a public teacher with formal students. It can be as simple as sharing runes with a friend at an appropriate moment, or writing about experiences so that others can benefit. It is the moment when the responsibility shifts from only self-development to contributing to the living lineage of the runic tradition. Chapter 35. Personal Initiation. The personal initiation into the runes is an intimate journey that each practitioner must undertake alone. It involves spending significant time with each rune individually, not just days, but weeks or even months with each one. During this period, the rune becomes the primary focus of spiritual practice. One meditates with it daily. Its name is chanted. Its form is traced. A talisman of it is carried. Attention is paid to how its energy manifests in daily life. This deep process develops a personal relationship with each rune. They are no longer abstract concepts, but familiar presences, known allies. One knows without consulting a book when Uruz is needed versus when Sawilo is needed. One can feel the presence of a specific rune in a situation or person. The runes become the soul's native language, a way of reading and navigating reality that is as natural as breathing. Some practitioners maintain an altar or space dedicated to the rune they are studying, changing the decoration and focus each time they move to the next rune. Others create art inspired by each rune, paintings or poems that capture its essence. Others keep a detailed diary of their journey through the Futhark, documenting experiences, insights, and synchronicities associated with each rune. Upon completing this journey through all 24 runes, the practitioner has essentially made a shamanic journey through all the aspects of existence that the runes map. One has visited worlds of abundance and scarcity, strength and weakness, protection and vulnerability, clarity and confusion, victory and defeat, joy and pain. One has known the complete territory of human and cosmic experience that the Futhark describes, and has integrated all these energies into one's being. Chapter 36. Runic Protection as Vibrational Medicine. The runes, as we have established, are not simply passive symbols, but active portals to specific forces, and among their multiple applications, perhaps none is more immediate and practical than their use as vibrational medicine, as healing tools that operate not through physical chemistry, but through the reorganization of energetic patterns that underlie health and disease. Vibrational medicine recognizes that before an illness manifests in the physical body, it first exists as a distortion in the energetic field, a blockage in the flow of life force, a dysfunctional pattern on subtle levels. If we can intervene on these subtle levels, we can prevent or reverse physical manifestation before it becomes deeply rooted. Each rune of the Futhark corresponds to a specific aspect of health and well-being, not in a rigid or dogmatic way, but as a natural tendency emerging from its archetypal energy. Understanding these correspondences allows one to intuitively diagnose which runi or runes might be appropriate for a specific situation. Let's first consider the runes of protection, those that create a field of security, defend against negative influences, and fortify the boundaries of the self. Algiz is perhaps the most powerful of these. Its visual form resembles a person with arms extended upwards, or elk antlers, or a tree with branches reaching toward the sky. It represents a connection with higher protective forces, with spiritual guides, with the gods themselves. Chanting Algiz, especially in situations where one feels vulnerable or under attack, energetic or literal, creates a tangible field of protection. Practitioners report a sensation of being surrounded by an invisible shield, of being held by a presence greater than themselves. Algiz protects not through aggression, but through elevation, through tuning into frequencies where negative energies simply cannot reach. Iwaz, the rune of the yew tree, associated with death and rebirth, with resistance and longevity, offers a different type of protection. It is protection through paradoxical flexibility, through the yew's ability to bend without breaking. Iwaz protects by allowing negative energies to flow around and through us without causing harm, like a willow that bows to the wind but does not fall. Thurisaz, as we saw, is a more aggressive force, a thorn or a hammer that actively repels threats. It is protection through a demonstration of strength, through establishing clear boundaries that will not be crossed. Thurisaz is appropriate when not only defense, but counterattack is needed, when passivity would be interpreted as weakness and invite greater aggression. Chapter 37. The runes of healing operate through multiple mechanisms. Uruz, with its power of brute vital force, is like an infusion of pure energy into a weakened system. When someone is exhausted, when vitality is low, when there is a sense of being drained, Uruz is the appropriate medicine. Its chant is deep, resonating in the belly and chest, vibrating like the roar of a powerful beast. It awakens the reserves of strength that are always present, but are often inaccessible under layers of fatigue and discouragement. Sowilo, the rune of the sun, is healing through light and heat. Just as the physical sun is necessary for health, dissolving excessive moisture, killing pathogens through ultraviolet radiation, lifting mood through the stimulation of serotonin production, Sowilo as a rune operates similarly on energetic levels. Chant Sowilo when there is internal darkness, depression, or a sense of existential cold. Its vibration is bright, radiant, and warming from within. Berkano, the rune of the birch tree, of springtime growth, of the Great Mother, is healing through nurture and regeneration. When tissues need to repair, when there is a need to grow again after loss or trauma, when the maternal energy that sustains and feeds the healing process is required, Berkano is the choice. Its chant is gentle yet persistent, like sap ascending through a tree trunk in spring, like milk flowing from mother to child. These runes and others with healing applications do not replace conventional medicine. No one should abandon necessary medical treatment in favor of exclusively runic work. But the runes can complement medical treatment, working on levels that physical medicine does not reach, accelerating healing, strengthening the will to live, and keeping the spirit uplifted during a long recovery process. Chapter 38. The runes of transformation are those that facilitate fundamental change, mark turning points, break old patterns, and allow the emergence of the new. Dagaz, literally day or dawn, is the rune of sudden awakening, of illumination, of the moment where everything changes. Its visual shape is two triangles meeting at a central point, like a butterfly, like a door opening to both sides simultaneously. Dagaz is not gradual change, but radical and instant transformation. It is the moment of spiritual awakening where a truth that had been obscure suddenly becomes obvious. It is the instant of decision where the entire future pivots. Chanting Dagaz during periods of stagnation, when one knows change is necessary but is not occurring, can be the catalyst that finally breaks inertia and allows a long-prepared transformation to manifest. Othala, the last rune of the Futhark, represents ancestral heritage, homeland, and property, not in a superficial material sense, but in the deep sense of what truly belongs to us by right of birth. It is about reclaiming gifts that were transmitted through the bloodline, recognizing patterns that come from ancestors, both patterns of strength and patterns of trauma that need to be healed so they cease to be transmitted to future generations. Working with Othala is ancestral healing work, recognizing that we are not just isolated individuals, but points on a continuous line that extends backward through countless generations and forward toward descendants yet unborn. Healing dysfunctional ancestral patterns within ourselves is a service not only to us, but to the entire line. Chanting Othala with the intention of ancestral healing can bring memories, insights, and sometimes intense emotional experiences as long-buried patterns emerge to be finally resolved. Chapter 39. We have journeyed through the living alphabet, from Thaihu, primordial abundance, to Othala, the completed ancestral heritage. We have learned that the runes are more than symbols, that they are portals to cosmic forces, that their power resides at the intersection of visual form, vocal sound, and archetypal force. We have seen how they can be used for protection, for healing, for transformation. But all this knowledge is preparation. The real work begins when we close the books, when we stop reading about runes and start chanting them, when we stop thinking about their power and start experiencing it directly. The runes, as Odin discovered, do not yield to passive study. They demand commitment, practice, and a willingness to be transformed by the process. The path of the rune master, the Vitki, is not a path of accumulating information, but a path of personal transformation through an intimate and prolonged relationship with each of the 24 runes. It is a journey that can take years, one that is in fact never truly completed because each rune contains infinite depths that continue to reveal themselves as the practitioner matures and deepens. The first step is choice. Not all people are called to this path. The runes are a powerful but specific tool, rooted in a particular cultural tradition that resonates deeply with some but not with all. If you have read this far, if something in you has responded to what you have heard, perhaps you are one of those for whom the runes have a message, for whom this ancient alphabet can be a key that opens long-closed doors. If you choose to continue, the next step is to begin regular practice. This does not require daily hours or elaborate rituals, especially at the beginning. It can be as simple as dedicating 15 minutes each day to working with one rune. Visualize it. Trace its form in the air or on paper. Pronounce its name, chant its sound, meditate on its meaning, allow it to teach. You could begin with the first rune, Fehu, and spend a full week with it before advancing to Uruz. Or you could be intuitively guided toward a particular rune that calls your attention. There is no single correct method. What matters is consistency, returning day after day, building a relationship through repeated presence and sustained attention. Chapter 40. As the work deepens, changes will begin to occur. Some will be subtle, almost imperceptible at first. You might notice that certain situations in your life resolve more easily, as if there were invisible help. You might find that you have access to internal resources you didn't know you possessed. You might experience increased synchronicities, moments where the external world seems to respond to your internal work in surprising ways. Other changes will be more dramatic. You might have powerful dreams where the runes appear and teach you directly. You might have experiences during meditation where you feel the presence of the runes as conscious entities. You might go through crises that are actually initiations, trials that the runes themselves present to verify your sincerity and forge your character. These trials are not punishments, but gifts, although they do not always feel that way at the moment. They are opportunities to demonstrate to the runes and to yourself that you are serious about this path, that you are willing to endure temporary discomfort for long-term growth. Every trial overcome is a credential earned, a door opened to deeper levels of the mysteries. And gradually, through months and years of practice, something notable happens. The runes become internalized. They are no longer external symbols that you must consult or consciously invoke. They become part of your internal structure, an aspect of how you perceive and navigate reality. You begin to see the world through a runic lens, recognizing the energy of Fehu in the flow of abundance, of Thurisaz in necessary confrontation, of Dagas in a moment of breakthrough. You become, in a sense, a living embodiment of the Futhark, a human being who has integrated the 24 archetypal forces that the runes represent. You no longer need to invoke algae's protection because you live in a state of algaes. You no longer need to call the strength of Uruz because Uruz flows through you naturally. The runes have become not something you have, but something you are. Chapter 41. This is the point where the apprentice becomes the master, where the receiver becomes the transmitter. Because the knowledge of the runes, like all authentic spiritual knowledge, is not for accumulation, but for sharing. Not in a proselytizing manner, not trying to convert others, but simply through being a living example of what the runes can do, through being available when others feel the call and seek guidance. You might find yourself teaching formally, offering classes or workshops on runes, or you might teach informally, answering questions when friends or acquaintances notice something different in you and ask what has changed. Or you might teach silently, through how you live your life, through the energetic field that you now radiate, which affects all who enter your presence, even if you never mention a word about runes. Whatever form it takes, transmitting the runes is a responsibility that comes with mastery. You have received a gift from an ancient tradition, from countless practitioners who preserved this knowledge through centuries of suppression. Now it is your turn to ensure that the runes are not lost again, that they are transmitted to the next generation of seekers who will come after you. But transmitting is not just passing on information. It is transmitting the fire, the passion, the sense of the sacred that surrounds the runes. It is ensuring that those who come after understand that the runes are not toys or tools of egoic power, but a serious spiritual technology that requires respect, preparation, and pure intention. It is about teaching the ethics of runic use, that the power the runes confer must be used for healing, protection, and upliftment, never for manipulation, domination, or harm. That the runes respond to a pure heart and will eventually punish anyone who uses them for selfish or destructive purposes. That they are powerful allies, but also strict judges of character. Chapter 42. And so we come to the end of this transmission, although in reality there is no end, only a pause before the cycle begins again. The runes, as the alphabet they are, can always be read anew. They will always reveal new meanings, new depths, new applications. The text of the cosmos, written in 24 letters, is inexhaustible in its richness. Odin hung for 9 nights to perceive the runes. You do not need to literally duplicate his sacrifice, but the spirit of his act, the willingness to endure discomfort, to sacrifice the security of the known, to risk oneself in the unknown. This spirit is necessary. The runes do not come to the lukewarm, to the merely curious, to those who seek power without a price, but for those who come with a sincere heart, with a willingness to work, with humility to learn and courage to be transformed. The runes open treasures. They open doors to dimensions of reality that remain closed to ordinary perception. They confer powers that are real, though not always spectacular. They connect one with a line of ancestors and masters that stretches back thousands of years. The runes are the alphabet of the cosmos, the language in which fundamental reality expresses itself. Learning this alphabet is learning to read the book of your own life, to understand the patterns that have brought you here, to consciously write future chapters instead of being written by forces you do not understand. The 24 runes are complete in themselves, but are also a door to what is beyond all form and all symbol. The ultimate master is not the one who has memorized all the runes, but the one who has understood the silence that exists between them, the blank space of the page upon which all the runes are written, the pure consciousness that perceives and uses symbols but does not identify with any. This is the final destiny of the runic journey, not the accumulation of power or knowledge, but liberation in the understanding that all the power was always present, that all the knowledge was always accessible, that the runes add nothing that was not already part of our essential nature. They simply remind us, awaken us, and guide us back to what we have always been. The living alphabet has spoken. The runes have sung their song. The forms have shown in inner vision. Now the silence. Now the integration. Now the practice that transforms knowledge into wisdom, information into realization, external symbols into living, embodied truth. The runes are waiting, patient as they have waited for eons, immutable in their power, adaptable in their expression, eternal in their relevance. The world tree still stands at the center of all existence. The runes still shine in its roots and branches for those with eyes to see. Odin still hangs in eternal sacrifice, offering his example of what it costs to obtain true wisdom. Will you also hang? Will you sacrifice the comfort of ignorance for the discomfort of knowledge? Will you trade a predictable life of ordinary sleep for an unpredictable life of conscious awakening? The runes cannot make this decision for you. They can only wait, shining silently in the darkness, ready to reveal their secrets to whoever makes the choice and takes the first step toward the eternal alphabet that has always been and always will be. Writing the history of the cosmos in 24 sacred forms of immemorial power. May the runes guide you. May the ancestors protect you. May the journey transform you. And may you eventually, when you have walked the complete path, be able to look back and recognize that every step was necessary, every rune was a teacher, every challenge was a gift, and that you yourself have been transformed from a reader of runes into a living rune, from a seeker of the alphabet into a letter in the cosmic text that never ceases to write itself on the infinite page of conscious existence. The manuscript closes. The runes shine one last time and then fade into silence. But the silence is not emptiness. It is fullness. It is potential. It is the space between letters where the real meaning resides, waiting to be discovered by those brave enough to read what is written in the language that precedes and transcends all words, the language of being itself, expressing itself in the eternal forms we call runes, the immortal letters of the living alphabet of the self-aware universe.